I think anyone in business today needs to think about the future and the future direction of the markets that they participate in. Every sector is different. Every sector has its own challenges, but if you don't look to the future, you don't know where your growth is coming from, and you don't know where your customers are going. And without customers, you have no business. And that's the key, seeing what the trends are within your customer base of your sector. When I was at Quest, one of the companies I was able to participate in, a couple of the trends that were taking place in 2002 are ones that would surprise you today because no one saw them. The first was wireless had been around for about 10 years, but no one knew the strength of the wireless market prior to the year 2000. Today, if you look at the number of communications links that are out there, we've actually grown the number of lines or the number of telephone numbers people have. Why? Because in a home that used to have one telephone number, there are now 5 cell phones. In addition to that, high-speed internet was just starting to be someone's thought, and 256 kilobit was fast. But people did not visualize, or many people didn't. I think we did. That was one of the changes we made. People needed to visualize the downloading of movies, the downloading of huge files and data. In 2002 and 2000, in that time frame, people didn't see the depth of where this would go. And one last comment. I don't think anyone knew what social networking really meant. Today, people are still learning and still adjusting to social networking. When I got to Quest, just 2 stories. When I got to Quest, here's a company with 13 million access lines or telephone lines, but they had divested their wireless assets. Where was their growth going to come from? As university students and as people moved away from having a landline or a telephone line in their home to using their cell phone full time. Oh my gosh, we didn't have wireless. The second was the management team had decided that we would not spend the money, invest in the future by putting high-speed internet into homes. What that meant was that if you were a customer, you still used dial-up. Can you imagine today having to use dial-up? How long would it take to download that file? How long would it take to look for and do research on Expedia or whatever you want? It would be very difficult to do your holiday shopping online. So I think what that proves is that you need to look at the trends, you need to understand the customers, where they're going, what the art of the possibility is, and the technology, and then plan for that growth and invest in it, even though your return on invested capital may look a little gray to you at the time. But if you don't do it, if you don't grow, you're standing still or you're going backwards, and that means the future of your company or your business is truly questionable. In 2002, when I went to Quest, our focus had to be on future planning. It had to be on the growth of the business. We were actually not growing the business. We had negative revenue growth, which had huge implications for employment and for our shareholders. So we focused in on where were the opportunities, how could we deal with those opportunities successfully in a competitive marketplace. We did turn that corner. We did have growth because we focused on the future and didn't dwell on the past, and we didn't focus internally. We only focused on the customers. Everybody needs to be focused on the customer because that's why companies exist. That's why shareholders invest in companies. By the way, whether it's private equity or a public company, it's the same. Growth. People are looking for growth. I think today, when one plans for the future, when one looks to the future, the world has shrunk, if I could use that expression. The opportunities to do things today have never been more exciting. Think about what's going on in Iran today, for example. I mean, out of Iran today, through the blogs, through social networking, even though the government has squelched any of the traditional media from reporting, you're getting videos, you're getting up-to-the-minute information of what's going on there. Think of it also, one example, another one is when you think about China. China tried to censor. The world pushed back. So we have to think in the context not of the United States alone, but in the context of a worldwide communications. This shrinks the world. This creates new opportunities. Anyone graduating from a business school today or from college today needs to really look to the future and see what the directions are. There are a couple of reasons. First of all, you're not going to be successful if you're living in the past. We often said in my companies, you never look through the rearview mirror other than to learn. No need to second guess, it's already passed. Only look through the windshield on where you're going. The other reason I think you need to have that vision, to develop that vision and that technique for seeing where you're going, is the job you take or the job you aspire to may be a job that's going away. It may be in an industry that's not as exciting. It's not the future. By the way, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, but one needs to have one's eyes open. I also think learning the techniques and the skills for seeing where the future takes your company or the sector you are in is critically important for anyone coming out of graduate school today. That discipline must be kind of ingrained in one if you're going to be successful. The companies that I was part of, we looked for people with a diversity of experience. We often talk about diversity in gender or heritage, but diversity of experience is very important because if you're going to look at where you're going to go, the people I would look for are people that have experiences already. In hiring a graduate student or hiring someone out of a business school, I want someone who wants to continue their lifelong learning and experience the different opportunities within the company. I also want someone that's willing, and I'm repeating this on purpose, willing to learn, that doesn't know all the answers, but is also willing to push back and talk. When I talk to a 14-year-old today versus a 50-year-old or someone at my age in their 60s, it's a different world. If we're going to look out 10 years, if we're going to look out 5 years, if we're going to look out 3 years, it's very important that certain skills are acquired. The skill to segment. And by that I mean, in a capital-intensive business, you have to make billions of dollars of investments. And you won't receive anything for 3 or 4 years out, or longer. If you're in a product manufacturing, I ran a manufacturing company, if you're going to build a product, your R&D, what you discover today or create today, won't get to market for 3 years. So you have to be thinking. You have to be thinking out 3 and 4 years, and to do that, you have to be able to segment the market. You have to then be able to look at those segments of the market and say, I have an opportunity to create a revenue stream of X. You can't be all things to all people. That's critical. You have to narrow your focus, and you have to focus in on the customer and where that customer might go. In doing that, the second thing you have to look at is, where will technology be? Because you could create, as we did in one of my companies, we created a technology that was fantastic. We won all kinds of awards. And we did it because customers said, you know, we're going to need that in 3 years. Well, the 3 years came and went. They didn't need it, and we ate a lot of R&D and a lot of effort. So you have to see where technology is going and seeing if by the time you get your product to market, to meet that customer expectation, and by expectation I mean enough expectation they're going to spend some money so you get a return, you have to see if technology will bypass whatever it is you're working on today. You have to anticipate that. And then the third thing that I think has to be very, very important is the discipline that one has of a return on invested capital. If you're going to do this R&D, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to spend some money, and some of it just isn't going to pan out. It's okay, because while you're making one mistake, maybe you hit the other one out of the ballpark, and that's the difference. But you have to take the risk. You have to be willing to take the risk You cannot stand still. One has to stay totally engaged, immersed in the sector you are in and what you are doing to be able, and listen to your customers constantly to get a feel for where that next generation of product is. I think of products like the waves of the ocean. The wave that's hitting the beach today, I got it. The wave that's 10 feet out, that's the one I got to be thinking about, and the one behind that one. Because what I produce today, I can be bypassed by my competitor 6 months from now. We often used to say, price gets you about 5 minutes of being on top of the world. Technology is worth about 6 months before people go past you. So the future, I think it's unknown. It is unknown. And I think you have to be able, again, to think of the opportunities that the future holds, remembering that you might be off a little, but you got to make some bets. Because again, and cycle back to this, what you think of today, by the time it hits market, 3 to 4 years out, what you do today may take longer depending on how much capital is required, like we had in the communications sector.